Hey guys, this is part two of the video for today. Because some people were like, Mr. Schmidt, we only got questions 21 through 23 answered. What about the rest of the notes? So here we go. We're going to go with the rest of the notes. So hopefully you guys tuned in to the first video that's coming. We haven't loaded it yet, but we're going to be loading it soon. But the first video, there was one more thing that I needed to talk about. And that is to say this. The rain in Spain falls mostly on the plains, as was a most common quote of many people. My grandma always said that, to quote, that to ask and not to ask are two different things. If you don't ask, you never know if the answer might be yes. Or to quote my wife, the mama is always right. Or to quote my daughter, Dad, just keep it safe. Or simple, sorry, not safe, simple. Yeah, safe. I'm thinking of COVID here. So yes, if you start thinking about quoting way too much in your body paragraph, then probably what I just went through will probably be what I say to you guys. That doesn't make any sense. So please, even though most of the stuff that tells you how to on the body paragraph and it mentions quotations, don't quote everything. In fact, actually maybe keep your quotes to one, right? Because if you quote too much, then that shows me nothing. That shows me that you just can copy really good. So please make sure you keep your quotes to not very little. So, homework for tonight, especially those people that might be like, Mr. Schmidt, you never told us what the homework was. Well, here it is. Homework, read pages 445 to 450. 445 to 450. Do questions 21 through 25 in your study guide. And I want you to start looking at that last question, which is your essay. And I want you to start putting together a thesis and an introductory paragraph for that essay. Because next week when we take the test, I'm going to have you hopefully have that all written and ready to go, so that the only thing that you have to write during the test is the body paragraphs and something called a conclusion, so that it'll keep it as simple as possible and make the test as easy as possible. All right, so today we want to go on with the notes. So the last time we left off, we were talking about selective service. That is, that if you don't want to join the military, too bad. If you're a guy and at first when you were 21 to 30, but then eventually when you're 18 to 45, you got to sign up for this selective service thing, and if the government says you got to go, you got to go. So, letter C. The military will continue to discriminate against minorities as it had since the Civil War. So even though Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Italian Americans, German Americans, all these groups of people, even though they're going to serve in our military, many of them are going to face a lot of discrimination, and by and far, African Americans are going to get the most. The first point under that is that foreign recruits were taught to be citizens. So many Italian Americans were never allowed to do combat, but they were sent to a military school learning how to speak English. Or they might be taken to a military school to learn what U.S. government was. They were never brought into combat. They were simply brought to the different military camps to learn how to be U.S. citizens. The Marines excluded Black Americans. The Marines excluded Black Americans because they believed, oh boy, here we go, that they couldn't be loyal enough. They were afraid they couldn't be loyal enough. Ridiculous, but that's what they thought. Another branch of the military that discriminates is the Air Force. The Air Force, there we go. The Air Force will exclude Black Americans. The Air Force will exclude Black Americans because they believed that they had too low of an IQ, so they just weren't smart enough to fly the planes. The next thing is, at first, Black soldiers could not be in combat. Instead, they could not be in combat. Instead, they will be used as labor. In other words, digging trenches, digging latrines. Those are bathrooms. They won't be allowed to serve in combat. So there was a lot of definite discrimination. Letter D, new weapons require both new and better IQs. Up until now, most people were trained how to take a musket, load the musket ball, and fire off the musket. Most people were never taught how to do anything else other than that. Well, today's military in the World War I era will need to be able to do things like fly a plane. Eventually, they'll have to be able to drive a tank. Those are very complex things. So what they are going to need to do is they are going to need to create a large group IQ test. A large group IQ test will have to be created, and it's created by a gentleman by the name of Otis. So there's going to be a need to create a large IQ test, and it's created by a gentleman by the name of Otis. So if you guys remember some of your standardized testing, you may have taken an Otis, which was designed to test your IQ. Letter E, American women will serve in the military primarily as nurses. About 10,000 American women will serve in the military as nurses. Letter F, the U.S. Navy and the British Navy developed the Convoy System. The Convoy System was pretty easy, but very difficult if you didn't ever think about it. These are all unarmed ships. The Convoy System was designed to keep the ships safe from what we've talked about already. These are military ships. These are all military ships. So on the outside are military ships, and what are they protecting the convoy from? Oh, the dreaded German U-boats, right? Better known as subs. So the idea was these military ships were supposed to keep the U-boats away from these supply ships that were unarmed, and they didn't have any way to defend themselves. So the first dash is these merchant ships were guarded by fast destroyers. These merchant ships were guarded by fast destroyers. These merchant ships were guarded by fast destroyers. These destroyers have underwater explosives to force the submarines to the surface. These destroyers had underwater explosives to force the submarines to the surface. And if you look right here, you can see in your picture of your notes, these big racks have these cans inside of them. These cans have explosives. And what would happen is if there was a sub nearby, they would roll these cans over the sides of these destroyers, and then the cans would explode under the water, and they of course hope to hit and kill the U-boats. So this is what the fast destroyers did in the convoy. The end of the war, Roman numeral 7, the end of the war. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk removes Russia from the war. This means that now all those German troops that were out west or east now can run to the Western Front. They can go to the Western Front. So this releases all these German troops now to the Western Front. And so the British and the French are freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh, how could Russia do this to us? They're now going to allow these German soldiers to come and attack us. In fact, the key officers that are now running the German military, Ludendorff and Hindenburg, will launch a huge offensive. They will launch a huge offensive. And they will use some of the biggest guns that we've seen so far in the war. One of these is the picture here of the gun that we're going to talk about, Big Bertha. If you can look right here, this is the actual size of the soldiers that are compared to this gun. Literally, to clean this gun, these soldiers would actually climb into the barrel and climb down the barrel and scrub inside the barrel. That's how big this cannon was. So what did this cannon do? Well, this German rail gun, like Big Bertha, could shoot at Paris 75 miles away. That would be like parking Big Bertha in PCA's parking lot and shooting at Jackson, Michigan. So, you figure out, Jackson, Michigan, a little bit short of 75 miles. But if you could just imagine sitting at PCA with this cannon and then shooting at Jackson, Michigan and hitting targets, that's kind of crazy, right? So this is what the Germans are going to do because they're going to go for broke. They want to win this war and they want to get rid of France and Britain before who comes? Well, who could be coming to this war? I could say something like it starts with a U and it's us. Oh, US. Yes, that's us. Yes, they don't want us to get into this war before they beat Britain and France. Okay, guys, so that's it for today. That gets you through question 25 and maybe even 26. Remember, make sure you guys read. Make sure you guys do questions 21 through 25. And don't forget, we need you to start to write your thesis and your introductory paragraph. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.